Good afternoon, Scott Redler, T3 Live. Welcome to today's recap. So basic inside day in the indices with very, I would say quiet / lethargic action. If you were looking for momentum, it was definitely hard to find. There was some opportunities here and there, but really nothing to write home about, except for if I had a dollar in my pocket for every person out there that's tried to call a top in this market and look so smart and try and make a name for themselves, I probably wouldn't have to trade. I could just collect dollars. Anyway, with that said, you take a look at the chart of the spiders. You will see that here we are. This is all we had today. A little inside day, a day in the life of what has been a really nice uptrend. Here's your red dog reversal. We're on an intermediate basis of refresh, your gap up, and then you had your quick move all the way up to test a downtrend. And this was New Year's Eve. Remember that when we reversed hard, potent. That gave you an indication that we were back on track, and then you had the gap up to start the year. And then even if you didn't want to take it into New Year's, here was your digestion. And then from here, we've done a very good job following the 8-day moving average. Within this trend, there were 2 days. 2 days that we closed on it, 2 days that I probably went home with very, very light exposure, because who knows? These days could have led to a move to the 21-day. It could have started a brief retracement, but it didn't. Following day, we gapped up, and you had some time to add on different longs in different sectors, which has been key. Like right now, you're in a market where all stocks aren't created equal, both positive side and the negative side. And when the market continues to trend, you want to see where the money's flowing and see where the setups are. Like if you're looking to be short certain stocks, right now there are a few that are showing relative weakness. You want to go to VMW. Wasn't sure exactly which way this one was going to go, but at this point, I guess if you want to cheat, some guys probably got short today. It broke this little trend line here. Here is your gap resistance. Never even thought about filling it and closing the dead lows. So we'll see what happens if they let a stock like this break down. But overall, this is a huge gap, into major support. Maybe that'll give it enough power for it to continue to the downside. BIDU also, this stock not able to fill its earnings gap, or hasn't had the downside yet either. But all in all, here's your lower pivot. Still can go one way or another, but you have a tight range here. If it goes above this area, potentially you get a nice little gap fill, like we've been seeing in Apple, which I'll get to later, or it breaks support, and the stock's been showing relative weakness. It's been in somewhat of a downtrend, and just giving us some trades here and there ever since your little series of lower highs here. It's below the 200-day. It's still technically somewhat broken. We'll see what happens there. Amazon, actually, you're looking for something to short. I know the other day we tried to short it, and it didn't really work so well. Here is the earnings. Remember the gap up at 284, held it there, and then it came down pretty quickly. And then from here, you had some little back and forth on this day. We actually made some decent money shorted, but then it came back up and then hung in there. And then today, it broke the 50-day with authority. I actually didn't make money shorting it today. I, got involved a little bit towards the end of the day saying, if you're looking for something that follows the good book, this should go to the downside. Broke the 50-day first time in a while, and it's been weeks since earnings. People talking about valuation here. I think they even had a little good news this morning. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. If it opens up, maybe you shorted versus this, then add through today's low tomorrow. If it opens down, you cover some, get paid, and that's a little bit of an overnight trade. If you want to talk about Apple, Tim Cook, I think, moved his keynote to tomorrow, 10:15 Eastern. Here's the top. Here's your major trend line. And then here was your bottom. This was a nice trade. It was welcome. Last week, when a lot of us were starting to get a little depressed, all of a sudden Apple woke up. Remember above, what was this? This was this high was 455, but I think we got in a little earlier, like 448. And then here was your add-on trade into the gap above 465. And then today it hit a peak of 484.94. I talked about pivot resistance right around here, which is the pre-earnings point of reference. Stalled there. Doesn't mean it's a short yet, but it means that, if you took some nice money out of Apple, you can get out of the way. If you want to stay with some, stay with some. Let's see if it can go hold sideways, and let's see what happens tomorrow. I think I saw something out there saying Tim Cook's going to be at the president's address to the nation also. We'll see. That's why he moved it. Anyway, let's see what he's going to do. Is he going to use the cash and give it back to investors? Is he going to do a buyback? What's going to go on with that potential watch? But anyway, the price action trumps all, and at this point, it has a lot to prove. It just rallied like 5% or more off the lows, so if you caught that, great. We were trying to help you guys through that, and now at this point, this is the first time overnight I don't have any long exposure to Apple. Though I think since Wednesday, I've been trying to hold some and trade around it, and at this point, if it's up tomorrow, it's fine. I don't see it as a compelling spot. But after a few days, maybe, or maybe even tomorrow, he speaks, he says something different with the market, the stock gets a huge volume burst, and I get back involved, but we'll see. As far as the banks, holding this group is one of the groups that's still above the 8-day. You have a few groups above the 8-day, like the banks, but not showing much power yet. Look at this closed up here. I know Citi, we were trading on the virtual trade floor. Still long some. I came in flatted, but thought perhaps maybe this would be the day it breaks above this 43.40, and it didn't yet. It's still above the 8-day. Here's your channel. Okay, it's in the upper end, showing some relative strength. Let's see if it can go. Bank of America is still just hanging around. Looks good though. You have another trend line here, holding the upper end. If this is your new channel, so to speak, here's the lower end. Here's a higher low, holding in there, flagging. So, I would say be long some, and if you can finally get above 12, perhaps when the market wants to take out highs, if it does, this is something along for the ride. If you remember how long this channel was, and then it started to act better right around here. You had a low, then you had a higher low, and then it hugged resistance before giving us a nice core trade, and then the add-on trade, and now it's starting to hug another trend line. So we'll see if we can get some kind of move here. So I'm still there. It's been a really nice trade all the way back from the summer at $8. You've just had some nice consolidation. Some guys got stopped out right around here. If you did so, hopefully you got back involved, because now it looks like there's been enough time for it to potentially go again. If the market wants to go, I think that goes. As far as the metals, I know on Thursday I was long. I thought maybe we'd get a breakout, and we didn't. I think I got stopped out somewhere around 161.5. Today, and just to show you how it's hard for the bears to win too, it gapped down, almost breaking or resolving the wedge to the downside. But again, you had to take your trade versus press your trade, because if you look at gold, closed a little bit off the lows. So at this point, see if it could fill this gap. But here's your new resistance coming in right around there. It's still above this major support. It's just like a no trade. Unless you have to trade gold. I know it's cost me money in 2013, and it's just not worth it for me right now. Even if you came in and you pressed it, you probably were upset because it came off the lows of the day. And if you're a bull and you're a bug, you've been trying to buy it as it's tried to break out here. It didn't work. Here it didn't work, and here it didn't work. This it looked like it was going to, and it didn't. So for me, I'm just going to let it be until I see something drastic. And as of right now, from a macro sense, people are still saying it's a nice consolidation within a decade run, that goes all the way back. But short term, it's just a choppy mess, in my opinion. LinkedIn, really nice. Gave you another day. For those short, they probably got taken out a little bit when we went above the pivot here. This is why I talk about pivots. This pivot was 158.90. No, actually, sorry. This pivot was hold on, let me just get a closer look. By the way, isn't this a gorgeous macro chart that resolved nicely to the upside? Hope some of you guys got involved. Anyway, here you go. The pivot was 151.89, traded through it, went as high as almost 160. I did not trade LinkedIn today just because I wanted it to rest, and it didn't, and now we'll see what happens. I told you this looks a little bit like what happened with Netflix, right? Don't just have short in the brain. Netflix gapped up, and people were like, oh, it was too much, and then boom, it broke above the earnings day high, and then continued, and then it rest, before going up again, and now it's trying to base here above the 8 days, so we'll see what happens tomorrow. Facebook, a different story. I'm starting to get a little chopped up here, a little annoyed. It was a nice clean trade right here when it held after this igniting move to fill that gap, and then another clean move was above this 28.60 to the 30s, and then I think we all got a little thrown for a loop here during earnings, because after hours it it filled the gap, and then the next day it filled the gap, and then all of a sudden started buying it on this day, which I kind of ignored the fact that it was relatively weak on that big day, just thinking that I wanted to be some macro guy saying it hasn't hit the highs of the year, which I still don't think it hit the highs of the year, but there's no reason to hold through something that closed on the dead lows when the market closed on the highs, and then I think got washed out a little bit here. And now if you look at the overall micro pattern here, you have your your pole, here's your flag, and it looks like it's going to go lower. And here's your support. I think Bernstein just downgraded after hours, and it probably heads a little lower. Overall, not the biggest deal in the world. Okay, look what it did. It came to resistance and fell there at the first time. Okay, if you want to put a Fibonacci in here, your retracement from where it broke out right here to the peak, all it's done is come into the 0.382, and it could still come to the the 50% mark and then do something decent. So we'll see what happens. I'm long small, and I actually didn't put it on until the end of the day because I got stopped out through the prior day low. But we'll see what happens here. We'll see how it handles it tomorrow. But overall, it's been acting relatively weak. I'm sorry that I've had a little bit of an opinion here, so it hasn't been that good. Zynga's been different since earnings. Nice move, right? Zynga, look at that. I know that we tried it a few times in this long base, and it was pretty faulty. Every time it had a wide range bar, failed, looked good, failed, and then looked good, failed, and then finally after earnings, the bid stayed. And I did trim some today. I have small left. Overall, a really nice move. This is what you call a treasure for trash trade, because someone who held it during the entire time when it showed relative weakness, ever since this shooting star top, it became trash for them. Somebody that re-entered here when it broke out on volume above 375, 385, or 285, I'm sorry, became their treasure. So that's the definition of a treasures for trash trade. And at this point, definitely sell some. What? Microsoft woke up a little bit today. I bought a little bit. I'm just thinking at some point people might start talking about Microsoft really being a value play down here after what happened with Dell. So it's showing some decent price action, but it's just a laggard trade, something to do. Intel, not much going on there, but I guess similar type concept. It's been crushed from 29 in April, and it looked good before earnings, but this actually also has a big earnings hole in its chart. So I guess at this point here is your small descending trend line. It's got to really start getting above this 2140 in order to look better. If not, it could continue just to be a no trade. I'm not involved here. I'm just looking at some of these value type mega cap tech stocks that have a boatload of cash to see if there's any kind of response to what took place here with Dell, which was a really nice move from November into where it is now. And if the shareholders wind up coming in and it gets the deal gets a little put back because they think it's worth a lot more than 1360 and it goes higher, then maybe some of those other names will get attention. And sorry, I hate to sound a little lethargic, but it's just the type of day that it was, where if you overtraded, you lost money. If you looked for things to do that weren't there, you definitely got a little spun around. But if you just stayed your course, did a little less, and stuck with positions you've been holding on in portfolio approach, chances are, today was just like a non-event for you. You made a little bit of progress. And if you continue to trim and trail, not overtrade, and just rotate your money, you'll do just fine. Overall, market's letting you get in certain scenarios, and they're letting you sell some strength. And there are also some opportunities to be short in certain areas. So with that said, tomorrow it'll be interesting to see what happens with Tim Cook. We have the State of the Union Tuesday night. We got some info coming out from the G7. So watch your yen, and we'll see you tomorrow. Another day in the life, and tomorrow Brittany will be with us, and we'll talk more then. Have a good night.
I'm Evan Lazarus, Chief Knowledge Officer for T3Live.com. You don't become a great trader by watching videos and taking courses. You become a great trader through live screen time. Accelerate that learning curve by tapping into the experience of seasoned professionals. Currently, we're offering 5-day free trials to each of our 4 mentoring rooms. In the mentoring rooms, we teach our strategies in the context of the live market. To sign up for a free trial, go to the T3 Live education page, fill out the form, and get started when the next trading session begins. We hope to see you in one of our mentoring rooms.